Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of You, a great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I wasn't expecting that our first run-in with Joe would be post everything with Marianne and that he's already kind of living his new life as Jonathan, as the professor. I wasn't expecting that. I was kind of thinking we start off with the Marianne stuff and then get to him. Like, I figured the Marianne stuff would be pretty quick going through because I brought this up during my trailer discussion. And once again, I don't know if this changes later on in the second half of the season or whether it's going to be a situation of there's going to be some developments in the first half of this season that kind of show like, oh, not everything's great on the side of things with Marianne, but we'll get to that soon enough. But because I noticed that she was not in the trailer much, except for like a few scenes. So I was like, okay. So I was like, did something happen to her? Did she die or something? I figured Joe didn't kill her, but I thought maybe an accident happened while he was trying to pursue her and she ended up dying. And that's what ends up making him kind of having to let her go. But he made the choice himself because it is sad because when she first saw him, there was a look of like, oh my God, happiness. But then she ran from him in fear. And obviously she's like, right, I know you killed Ryan. It's like he was trying to take your daughter from you. It's like, well, the fact is if you're here and still alive, that means you killed Love because the whole thing was supposed to be Love killed you and then like killed herself, you know. But it's like, if you're still here, that means you killed her. And it's like, how do I know there's not more people? And because she's like, yeah, please, my daughter's expecting me. It's like, what would make you think I'd try and keep you from? It's like, I loved you. I thought you loved me too. She's like, I did. But for her, it's like, you're a murderer. And she's actually one of the only people, with the exception of Love, finding out who Joe is to some extent and still being alive to tell that tale, because obviously it didn't work out great for Candace or Beck, you know. So for us to be on this side of things, and it's like, oh, she knows, and Joe lets her go because he wants to prove to her, like, no, I can't, I'm not the monster you think I am. So, but then we see that guy like eyeing him. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Turns out his name was it Elliot? He works for Love's father. I mean, it makes a lot of sense considering like they come from a very wealthy family. Plus, he already lost one child with 40. And now he lost Love too, and especially because everything paints Love in such a terrible light last season. So, understandably so, he probably didn't believe that. So, I wonder what made him decide to look into the fact is that Joe was alive. I guess with such little things being like, the only thing saying that Joe was killed was like the missing toe and stuff like that and getting cooked. That's about it. So it's like, it didn't add up. So, and it's probably that thing of, well, I knew my daughter better than anyone. There's no way she would do this, yada, 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 so on and so forth. But Joe lucked out because Elliot's like, yo, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm going to give you an opportunity. You could start fresh. I could tell Ray that you ended up, I'm telling Mr. Quinn that your dad is taken care of and I get to retire. You get to go live your life as Jonathan. But that woman, Marianne, she knows you're alive, so you need to take care of that. You know, it's like, yeah, you could get your fresh start as Jonathan, but after you've killed her, which he lets her go permanently because I think in Joe's mind, it's like, right, I have to fully let you go now. At least before I was going to go prove I can be a better person and show that I'm not the monster you think I am. But now he knows he has to stay away from her forever because if he gets caught, like if anything stirs up about him being alive and then it turns out that she's still alive, I'm sure Elliot's going to track you both down and kill you just to be able to say like, hey, I can't be shown to be like not good at my job, because he knows Ray will probably like crucify him if he finds out, because it's like, right, you let the guy who murdered my daughter get away. So it's like Ray probably has enough dirt on him to be like, yeah, I'm gonna take you down and ruin you. Or maybe he'll get some other hired fix-it type of person to end up killing Elliot. I don't know, but it would do no good for anyone, especially for Joe, because at very least, if he can't be with Marianne, he still wants to be that better person. Prove that he isn't the monster she thinks he is, the monster he doesn't believe himself to be. And he has moments of clarity, especially last season. He had moments of clarity realizing I think it was like season 2 is when he kind of became a lot more self-aware. Maybe it was last season. I want to say it was season 2. He was a lot more self-aware of his circumstances, and now he understands a little bit more of why he is the way he is with his past and everything with his mom and just things at the school that he was at or whatever. When we got those flashbacks last season, so I mean, we did meet his half didn't he have like, did he have one or two half siblings that we got introduced to in those flashbacks? You'd assume that's still going to come back in some shape or form, but I don't know. I mean, that might end up being the twist of this season, because like Joe was still fairly young when he found his mom again, if I remember correctly. So his sibling could be like not around his age, but younger. So we could be dealing with that. Like that might end up being the twist of the season, that like one of the people amongst him, which that could be like the what was the guy, Adam? The other American could easily be him, or it could just be someone, the fact is that you would just happen to run into another American, and it's kind of interesting. Because that is like a plot thread from last season that like we haven't circled back to, and it might be a thing of, yeah, it's meant to be in the back of your head, but maybe they haven't necessarily pulled the trigger on that particular storyline yet. We'll have to wait and see, but once again, Joe's trying to be on his best behavior, just teaching, enjoying it. It wasn't the life he was necessarily going for, but he does enjoy it, especially because his perspective, it's like, right, the people here, the British, they actually enjoy reading from cover to cover. They don't just buy something just never to read it. So, yes, it has its issues, but especially like, it's like living in, LA and in like the suburbs, it was just, because obviously, like, he had to leave a lot behind in New York, which obviously New York had its issues too, but it's like LA and the suburbs were like the worst for him. So it's like now kind of feeling like he's kind of back in right where he needs to be. Like it's almost like a second New York to him in some regards, probably more positive than negatives, but still. He has to deal with another fellow academiac, Malcolm, who keeps kind of dragging him into stuff. Malcolm like set him up with a place, but that place looks in on Malcolm and Kate's place, which for him, he's trying to fight his urges of like, no, I'm not gonna get obsessed. It's like, yeah, you tried super hard in season 3 not to let that happen, and we saw the debacle that was that situation. So, but he's trying his best. It's like, right, I'm wondering, he's like, no, don't start, like, don't focus on that, like, focus on yourself, like, don't get caught up in this again, this is the best, like, don't learn anything about these people. Well, he learns about them just because that way he gets to learn about them in the circles they run in and knows how to avoid them. It's like, yeah, the best, offense is the best offense is a good defense. So it's kind of like that, like knowing how to avoid his triggers to some extent. But it gets complicated when Kate gets mugged and he has to step in, but also be like, yeah, I don't want you to involve the cops. Like, if you call the cops, like, just don't mention me, just because like my visa's a little shaky. And it's like, I was like, I get why you had to do that, but it's like, even he was like, I hate that I had to do that, because now it makes me seem even more suspicious. And it does seem like that's what kind of, because Kate seems like she kind of doesn't like him later on, being like, oh, why are you at this party and stuff? It's like, I'm only here because Malcolm, like, he didn't really have a chance to explain, but I'm also like, Malcolm dragged me here. I didn't want to be here. I kept trying to say no, but Malcolm wouldn't let me say no. He's because he found out, like, obviously, like, oh, you helped out, Jonathan helped out Kate and everything. So, but at this party, he ends up meeting what is going to be like our core cast of people that Joe hates this season. So, and he did his research on everyone. I love there's that one guy that it's like, yeah, like, I don't know who he is. Everyone just basically told me to, I forgot, like, there's the one, like, guy you only, like, Joe mentions him in passing, and I don't think you hear a single line of dialogue from the guy, because he's at the end of the episode sitting at the table. He's like the super quiet guy that Joe, like, had no interactions with at all in the episode. But I do like that the person he does hit it off with is it's a guy who wrote a memoir. His name is, was it Reese? That he's kind of in a position where people want him to kind of run for mayor. He kind of comes from a fucked up childhood, very much like Joe, which Joe was almost like, wow, I actually really like this guy. I don't hate him yet. He actually wrote one of the best memoirs I've ever read before. So like there was kind of like a little bit of bonding, especially later on when he gave Joe advice about kind of like not wallowing in your mistakes. Your mistakes are your mistakes. Like all you can do is move forward, try to be better, You can't change what's already happened, but at the very least you can change how you handle things going forward, try to be better, to do better, So I thought that was kind of neat, but for Joe, it's still that thing of, yeah, what I've done, coming to face with that and accepting it is, yeah, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, because he got drunk because these people are douchebags and someone handed him like absinthe and he drunk it and he started losing time. Then Malcolm went on and on about like, oh yeah, because Joe, well, one of the people like pointed out, like, oh, why are you here? Was it heartbreak? Did you hurt someone? And one person was like, oh yeah, my cousin or something killed somebody. But it's like, oh, that was back before. I was like, now you definitely get canceled for killing somebody. It's like, shut up. I was like, but it's, once again, it's Joe always finds himself in that circle of like the rich and socialite type of people. Like it's so interesting that he despises them so much, those type of people, but he cannot help but find himself surrounded by those kind of like, oh, we're living up wealthy, we think we're better than you type of thing. He got mixed up in that world. Season 1, season 2, the suburb version of it in season 3. So it's just, and I think maybe you can make the argument, maybe Joe's never really taken the time to think, maybe I attract these people, especially at a time when he's trying to lay low and try not to get involved in all this. He wants to be away from it, but, there's just something about you give off this energy that draws these people around you, or at least who you're trying to pretend to be, draws these type of people in. So either way, he was kind of out of his mind, like, once again, losing time, slipping in and out, and then ultimately wakes up at home, not remembering anything, and finding Malcolm's dead body. So I was like, okay, I thought based on the trailer, the one or two times I saw it, I was like, oh, he must have killed a guy. He's like, oh, is Joe back into his old bag? It's like, no, Joe thinks he killed him. I mean, second time we've been in that situation. Obviously in season 2, he thought he killed, Ellie's sister. He thought he did that, but obviously it was love. And so now he's in a situation thinking like, oh man, I slipped up again. What am I going to do? And he ends up having to dispose of the body. Going full Dexter, obviously the trash bag, slicing the body up into many different pieces. Obviously continuing to do his Dexter thing. And dumping the body. And I thought it was interesting too when he ended up running into Kate, which she's kind of like, all right, you and me were kind of even now because you helped saved me, with the whole like mugging situation. So I didn't mention your name to the cops and stuff. Cause she's like, yeah, you're a little suspicious and weird. So it's like, I'm very nervous around like some stranger being around my group of friends. Once again, he didn't want to be around your group of friends. He didn't really have a chance to explain, but Malcolm dragged him there. But she did this interesting thing where Joe was kind of thinking to himself because the way she was talking, he's like, oh, I don't know whether to be like upset or like impressed by the fact is like the way she was kind of handling the situation. And he was kind of like off in his thoughts doing his monologue thing, and she's like snapping. He's like, where'd you go? I was like, wait, is that going to be a shtick of this season? Please tell me it is. It reminds me of not really kind of a spoiler, but not really. If you've seen Fleabag season 2, Hot Priest and Fleabag, it'd be interesting if they kind of go down that route, and that ends up being Kate and Joe's dynamic to some extent this season. I think that'd be an interesting approach to it because he is someone that's, kind of in that same vein, obviously it's very much in that same vein. So I think it'd be really interesting if they had a character kind of hot priested a little bit and Kate being that character. That instance, that moment of like, where'd you go made me feel like that might be what we get, but maybe not. Maybe it's just that one instance of it. But I think it'd be interesting if she's the one that kind of fills that role in this, season. But ultimately, like I brought up previously, Joe does find himself in the middle of a murder mystery because now he finds out, hey, I didn't do it. I didn't kill Malcolm. Some mysterious person who downloaded some app that's like, hey, you send a message and it automatically gets deleted later. And whoever it was, they underestimated Joe. They didn't know who he was. They're like, oh, I thought I'd just be able to pin this on you, but you surprised me getting rid of Malcolm. So it's like, cool. He's got a list of 9 suspects. And obviously, and the problem is, in a complicated situation of it all, and this might be something we get during part 1. I mean, who knows like how much of this mystery is going to extend across both parts or whether it's just going to be mainly in the first part. But the fact is that he doesn't remember much of the night, so that puts him at a disadvantage. But I'm sure storytelling wise, they're going to try and get him to kind of piece things bit by bit, filling in this mystery, because we got little bits of it. There was one person he was talking to and she was calling Malcolm a liar. So, and then all of a sudden he was with like the very like socialite lady, beside, I think it was her and Kate, and she was crying. He was like, wait, why is she crying? Did I make her cry? But then immediately Malcolm was like, yo, you gotta go. Oh yeah, cause like Adam's her boyfriend, isn't he? Cause also like, once again, he's like the other American. So At first, I was thinking for a second, I was like, was Malcolm her boyfriend? It's like, no, Malcolm and Kate are the ones dating. So list of, like I said, like 9 suspects, because I think even Reese is kind of getting put into that, because he did say he was going to go to Berlin, but he's like, oh yeah, like living here in like Europe, like everything's like 3 hours away. You can kind of get anywhere around pretty quickly. So the fact is, he was there the next morning. He was like, oh, are you okay? You look like you kind of got this look like all things kind of went severely wrong, or you kind of fucked up or something, like you cocked something up, you know? And I'm like, the fact is he immediately read that off of you makes you think like, maybe it's him, especially considering like him and Joe had like pretty deep conversations twice, that it feels like it could be him, especially because he admitted so much to Joe, being like, oh yeah, this was all a lie and stuff. And maybe the advice he gave Joe was because he kind of knows, because he was talking about like, hey, you know what I'm going through, I kind of know what you're going through. And so maybe it made that whole situation even better, because it's like, hey, I'll try and help you out because maybe you legitimately don't remember. I mean, Malcolm was killed there, and Joe never woke up. So the killer knows that, like, oh, he must have been passed out. He doesn't remember anything. So not unless it ends up being one of those twists where like Malcolm had some part to play in all of this too, and they were going, like him and whoever it was were going to do something, but it ended up in like that person turning on Malcolm and leading to the murder situation. Like, was it on purpose? Like, because that's where you also have to get into it too. Was it a crime of passion? Was it something that was premeditated? Questions like that. Obviously, it's the first episode. We don't know enough. The entire episode is just set up for this mystery, and we got 4 more episodes to see how this plays out. Like I said, I'm really interested to see if it ends up getting resolved in this first half, or is it going to carry over into the second half of the season. And also, like I brought up earlier, whether or not the Marianne situation is not going to be touched on again this season, or will it carry over into the second half of the season, or, you know, like I said, will Joe end up finding out that Marianne actually is dead? Because obviously keeping her alive is an issue, because it's like, right, she knows you're alive, but will she say anything? Because she's in this complicated spot where she does love you, and she doesn't know whether or not to believe. Like, I think murderer or not, I think there is some little bit part of her that can't help feeling the way she feels about him, but still it's like, right, I can't take the chance with you still being out there. Like, she didn't contact the police or anything like that, even though she knows Joe's alive, and who knows how long it's been in between. I mean, she has no idea where he is, but she still could put out like an alert about him. Goes to like had the police put like an APB out, or I don't know if it'd be called that in Europe or not. It's specifically in London, but because they might have a different name for it. But I know alert for Joe. So the fact is that hadn't happened means she kept quiet about it. Or, sadly, maybe Marianne's dead and Joe just doesn't know it yet, but he'll find out eventually, because maybe Elliot found out what he did and decided to take care of it himself. We'll ultimately just have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.